Hey, what's up, guys? Hello from chilly Canada, hanging out at my brother's front porch. Look at that. You know you're in Canada when you have a hockey net chilling in the backyard. Anyways, introduction for this video. So I recently was in BGC Manila. I spent a few weeks there and I caught up with my friend John, who's been living there for quite a while now. Absolutely loves living in BGC. And I wanted to throw at him a list of typical complaints that you hear from other expats of why they are unhappy with their life in the Philippines, why it ended up being the reason that they bailed out on the Philippines and it didn't work out for them. And in some cases, these are things that come up with guys that decide not even to give the Philippines a go because they've heard of some of these things and they just don't want anything to do with it. And so with John loving his setup in BGC so much, I wanted to put it to the test and see if any of these complaints apply to him in no particular order, starting with one common complaint: terrible food or food options in the Philippines. Here we go.
So living in Cebu, living in Davao, it took me a while to find the places that I really loved over there. And after, let's say, 5 years living in Cebu, I probably had 5 places that I really loved. Here in BGC, I've been here almost half a year now, and I have 10x that many places that I've tried in BGC, and I could probably live here 5 years and be trying new great restaurants, Spanish restaurants owned by Spanish people, Mediterranean places from, people in Greece. So it's really very international cuisine here. I've always complained on my videos about trying to find like great Mexican food, and there's places that I love here, finally. So yeah, I think in other places that's fair, but in BGC, there's just endless great options of places to eat. So I would say that's one of the things that I think there's enormous misunderstanding about in BGC. A lot of people don't even consider moving here because they think it's just so expensive to get a really nice type of place over here. For me, the standard that I really look at that I see pretty common in the bigger cities like Cebu, Davao, BGC is it's going to be about 1,000 pesos per square meter for a typical place. So, I lived in Cebu IT Park before, or I lived at Ian Towers, nice condo in Davao before, and I paid a little bit more than 1,000 pesos per square meter in those areas. In BGC, I'm in beautiful condo here, and I pay a little less than 1,000 pesos per square meter. So for kind of equivalent places in Cebu, Davao, BGC, I have found the best deal in BGC. It's incredible here. So I feel a little bit guilty at times, I'm not gonna lie, when I'll hear about floods in Manila, because if you just look online at the flood system that they planned out in BGC, state of the art, phenomenal. I've never experienced so much as, a centimeter of flooding over here in BGC. In terms of roads, they are new. I've never lived anywhere, and I don't think I've even ever traveled anywhere in the world that has sidewalks as wide as BGC. So it's just super walkable, as people talk about over here. It's really the gold standard in the Philippines for amazing infrastructure. I would be far more likely to experience, a brown out or a power outage in places that I lived in Northern California compared to here. I've never experienced anything like that. And there's been earthquakes, there's been heavy rains, the internet keeps going well. And so I would say internet's very reliable here. Electricity is very reliable here. Pretty much anywhere you are, there's going to be backup generators. No problems with any of those things. I've never heard a rooster or even seen a rooster in BGC, so nothing like that. I do find that if it's maybe a weekend, depending on where you live, in BGC, you might hear, a club in a distance, or a loud motorcycle, or somebody revving their Lamborghini a little bit too loud. So every once in a while you do hear those type of things, but it's very few and far between, and it hasn't been any problem for me. First, I want to say with Cebu, because I don't want to sound like I'm bashing Cebu. I love the people there. I love living there. And for me, I could really care less if there's spaghetti wire. So even if I really love the amenities and everything in BGC, those aren't the only reasons why I live here. However, it is really nice to get away from the trash and guys, using the side of the road as a bathroom, and, all the craziness that you see every day in Cebu City. So there's really none of that happens over here. There's just a lot of law enforcement that are over here that are watching over things. And also, I think people have a lot of pride in where they live and where they work. And so you just don't see any of those type of issues in BGC. So mostly here, just walking around, or, if it's too hot out and I don't want to get hot and sweaty, headed to a meeting or a meetup or something like that, I might grab one way and then walk, the rest of the way home when I'm leaving. But on the whole, it's such a walkable city that traffic doesn't impact me at all because I'm on foot more than ever. And it's just shorter grab rides if I have to go somewhere and I want to stay out of the heat for a while. Now, say that I want to go to somewhere like Makati and I want to leave BGC, I do got to time that. Especially if it gets to be around 4:30 p.m. or later and I want to leave, I might pay for that. So, I want to make sure that I leave just a little bit earlier. That does take some time to get used to if you're traveling. But if you're in Cebu City and you need to travel to Mandaue City or to Lapu-Lapu, traffic can also be insane these days as well. So when people say that Manila traffic is so much worse, I mostly say, have you lived in Cebu? Because it's not pretty over there either. So I find that there are some green space in BGC. There's a big green space just behind where we're filming here, and there's some other parks here. I would say my favorite place in the area for green space is that greenbelt area of Makati, where it's really intentional. They have old beautiful trees and a lot of grassways, but I would say BGC has far more green spaces in comparison to Cebu City. Now, one of the things I do love about Cebu City is, if you just go up the mountain a bit on the Trans-Central Highway, you're going to find some beautiful scenic mountain areas. But I always found that it was a bit of a myth in Cebu that it's very close to the beach. If you live in Cebu City, the closest beaches you're going to find is in Mactan, but you're going to be spending $250, $350 a night for an expensive resort. And the beachfront at 90% of those kind of suck. That's just the reality there. You're going to have to travel 3 hours to Moalboal, or you're going to have to travel 5 hours to go to Daan Bantayan. You really have to travel quite a ways in Cebu to be able to find a nice beach area. And it's going to be the same thing here. If you want to find a nice beach area, you're going to also have to travel a bit. So Cebu and BGC are similar to that. If you want to go to a beautiful mountain area, there's Tagaytay and other places that you would have to travel about an hour or so from BGC to be able to experience here. So they're fairly comparable if you want to get kind of out in the mountains in beautiful areas. I would say that a lot of the Filipinos that I meet here are maybe working professionals, or they're in this area because they've advanced in their career. I found that that's made it a lot easier to actually make friendships with people. As a working guy over here running a business, it's been really helpful for me to be able to build a network of other professionals that are, from here, either living in BGC or Makati or Pasig, somewhere, nearby, working here. But on the whole, everybody's friendly. It's still the great vibe because it's Filipino culture over here. And so that's why I love being in BGC, not because it's so different than everywhere else in the Philippines in terms of Filipino culture, but because really it still is Filipino culture with just perhaps, more professionals living here. I feel everybody's equally friendly here, kind. If it wasn't like that, I would go back to somewhere else in the Philippines, because that's why I choose to live in the Philippines to begin with. So I definitely think that different regions of the Philippines attract different types of expats. So in Cebu City, for example, a lot of retired guys over there. When I grow up, I want to be like them, retired living in the Philippines. But I would meet very, very few expats in Cebu that were working like me, or that were people that were over here with families. So often it would be retired, mostly American guys, I think overwhelmingly, that were in a relationship with a Filipino girlfriend or multiple Filipino girlfriends. Or there is the party crowd, that loves going to Mango area, and Cebu is definitely a great party city if that's the kind of thing that guys are into. But it's pretty monoculture, there's maybe some Americans, the odd Canadian, some Australians over there, and not too diverse. In Davao, I found that was different, where mostly it was family guys that just wanted to live a quiet life over there. BGC is really different. I definitely still meet a lot of retired guys over here. for whatever reason, it seems like, you know, a lot of people, not only from the US, but also a lot of Europeans over here as well. So at our, you know, Bridge House, California Expat Meetup in BGC, we have between about 35, 45 people coming over the last few months. And there has been people from about 20 different countries, you know, just all around the world, from, you know, Jamaica to South Africa to France, Germany, Poland, you know, on and on and on. And so there's so much more diversity here. Some of those guys are working for, you know, corporations here. Some of those people are business owners. So some of those guys are retired and, you know, just enjoying the good life in BGC. But I would definitely say that there's way more diversity here. And I found that BGC has by far been the easiest place for me to connect with like-minded expats. Not to say that I haven't met great guys everywhere I've been, but the sheer number of them makes it so much easier to connect with people here in BGC. I think one of the big differences about here is that you're going to find a lot more professional Filipinas that have had success in their career, more so than other parts of the Philippines. It's not to say that there aren't Filipinos like that in other places, but this is just a place, it's the big city. It's where a lot of Filipinos are going to go, and they're hardworking, and some guys are going to struggle with some of that. But I think that the reason why a lot of guys wind up in trouble with dating in the Philippines is because they're always dating the same exact Filipina. Maybe she comes from a smaller province area. Maybe she hasn't had her first job. Maybe she's living with family and doesn't have a lot of life experience. Maybe she struggles financially, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. However, I think that what guys will find in living in places like this is that there is more than one type of Filipina. Here, you're going to find a lot of beautiful Filipinas across the age ranges that just have a bit more life experience. You're finding people that have the initiative, you know, to leave their, you know, province area, to leave their family, which for sure, most Filipinas, as we know, they don't want to leave their family, but they were the person in their family that had that extra drive and commitment, you know, to be able to grow, to experience the big city, that are a bit easier at times to have a deep and meaningful conversation with, that maybe have already traveled overseas and have a bit more life experience, but are still a Filipina. You know, they're not Western women. You know, they have a lot of the wonderful things about Filipinas, plus them. So I think for guys as well, it's definitely worth just exploring a different type of person that they might be able to date in an area like BGC or Makati or surrounding areas. If I could bring a beach closer, that would be awesome. So that would probably be the only thing, you know, it would be great. I love the beach. There isn't one super close here, but, you know, that's me being a little bit nitpicky because I probably am not the kind of guy to be just sitting on a beach, you know, tanning every day anyhow. But I gotta say, out of everywhere I've traveled, everywhere I've lived, BGC is exponentially my favorite place, and definitely checks all the boxes for me. Even though I don't have the beach, which I'm not gonna lie, I would love, being near Manila Airport means that it's so much easier to just hop on the airport with the most direct flights to, you know, anywhere out of the Philippines at Manila Airport. In the last 5-6 months since I've been here, I've already been to Vietnam, I've been to Malaysia, and I've still gone back to Cebu and Davao and General Santos and other places still exploring as well. So it's very easy and inexpensive from here to be able to travel to other countries and other parts of the Philippines to continue exploring.
Thanks for sharing, man. I appreciate it. Why don't you give a little quick shout out to introduce your meetup group, if any guys are coming here to BGC to link up with you and hit the ground running, meeting some new people.
Yeah, sounds good. So we have a California Expat Facebook group, and we have a meetup that I promote on there called Bridge House, which is for local Filipinos and foreigners. We have a dinner once a week, every Wednesday, 6 p.m. So you guys will be able to find out all the event information, where it's going to be going on this week. And definitely would love to have guys come and visit, say hi if they're ever in the BGC area.
All right, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you, John, for your time and sharing your thoughts on that. I appreciate it. And I thank you guys for watching that one. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out John's YouTube channel, California Expat, and his weekly meetup group. Links in the description for all of that. Thanks again. See you soon. Bye.